and thanks for joining us on Chicago Tonight. I'm Amanda Vinicky. Brandis Friedman has the evening off. Here's what we're looking at. Donald Trump saw a big win in last week's election. So did his legal team. A look at what his re-election could mean for his ongoing legal cases. A federal judge finds a state law banning the sale of so-called assault weapons unconstitutional. We have local reaction.
Well, how did you milk her?
Squish, squish, squish.
And we revisit our conversation with legendary children's musician Ella Jenkins, who died this weekend at the age of 100. And now to some of today's top stories. One of Chicago's signature music festivals will not be returning to the city next summer. In an online statement, Pitchfork organizers did not say why the fest is leaving after its start here 19 years ago. It just says that the festival landscape continues to evolve rapidly and that the decision was not made lightly. Organizers did not say if the festival will be held in a different city instead, just that Pitchfork will produce events in 2025. Illinois lawmakers return to the Capitol tomorrow. The General Assembly's technically back for veto session, but there are no vetoed bills to consider. Instead, they'll take up new or unfinished business. Democrats who control the legislature could push guardrails ahead of Republican Donald Trump returning to the White House. Other measures potentially on the agenda include raising the minimum wage for disabled workers and gun storage requirements. The two-week veto session is the last time lawmakers are set to meet this year. It's Veterans Day. Top city and state officials commemorated the occasion with a ceremony thanking troops for their service. But U.S. Senator Dick Durbin says some Americans let veterans down last week.
We had an election a few days ago. Did you hear about it? 1/3 of the people eligible to vote did not register and vote. 1 out of 3. That does not honor our veterans. We honor our veterans by using that right to vote, whatever our choice may be.
Chicago was also designated a Purple Heart City. During the event, the proclamation was presented to retired Lieutenant Colonel Eldridge Johnson Jr., the first African-American to serve as an Illinois Air National Guard pilot. Banks, post office, and government offices that were closed today, they'll be back open tomorrow. And up next, how Trump's re-election upended his legal battles. That's right after this.
Chicago Tonight is made possible in part by the Alexandra and John Nichols family, the Jim and Kay Mabey family, the Polk Brothers Foundation, and the support of these donors.
The November 5th election wasn't just a victory for President-elect Donald Trump's campaign. It was a win for his legal team, too. He is now the first convicted felon to be elected president, which could mean a pause or even end to his legal troubles. Beyond his 34-count conviction in the New York hush money case, Trump still faces an election interference case in Georgia, plus 2 federal cases related to the January 6th Capitol attack and to his possession of classified documents at his Florida estate. Here to break down how things could change is Harold Krent, professor of law at Chicago-Kent College of Law. Thanks so much for joining us. Now, we know that he is already making history, but really, how unprecedented is it to have a president-elect, even a candidate, who's in this sort of legal muck?
Well, we've had one candidate before, Eugene Debs, back and who led the Socialist Party way back when. But this is obviously unprecedented. He's the first person to ever be convicted of a felon who's been elected president. And this will have a huge impact on his legal cases going forward. For like 3 sets of cases, but happy to sketch the differences.
Yeah, let's start with what he's already been convicted of, since that case is, of course, furthest along, and that is for the falsifying of business records related to these hush money payments during his first run for the presidency. Now, sentencing was supposed to happen later this month. Do you expect that it will continue to do so?
Even before that, tomorrow the judge will decide whether to throw out the conviction because of the Supreme Court's immunity decision. there is one reading of the Supreme Court's immunity decision which says that you can't use information from an official discussion between the president and his close advisors, even as a way to flesh out whether or not the president's guilty of some other crime. So he will have to make an assessment about whether, particularly the testimony of Hope Hicks, former press secretary for President Trump, so infected the New York proceedings as to throw out the verdict, in which that would open up for theoretically another trial after he steps down from being president.
It would be on delay. It would be after presumably 4 years that he serves out here. And that, again, is related to the immunity case that was decided by the U.S. Supreme Court in relation to another Trump case.
Right. And in terms of the federal cases, they're gone. They're gone for two reasons. First of all, President Trump will be head of the Justice Department, and as head of the Justice Department, he can say, dismiss the cases. But the second reason is that there is a longstanding government decision that presidents should not be criminally prosecuted when they're in the White House.
They're gone completely, or can they be picked back up, as you noted, maybe in 4 years' time or so?
The federal ones won't be, because the president, will direct the Attorney General to dismiss the cases. So by that time, the statute of limitations will have run. The New York case, that's a possibility. And the Georgia case, the other case, federal case, is the documents case in Florida, which is not going anywhere anyway, because the trial judge basically ruled in all sorts of ways for President Trump so he could avoid what I thought was a very clear-cut documents case in terms of breaching classified documents protocols. So that's not going anywhere, and it's on appeal now in the 11th Circuit anyway. The case that's interesting is the Fulton County case, in which is a racketeering charge for interfering in the elections. And that's been on hold because of Fani Willis and the questions about what happened with her appointment of the special counsel.
Somebody with whom supposedly she had relations, so tied up for reasons having nothing to do with the president
right.
elect.
And so they could resume, but probably again they won't do it while he's in presidency. So probably it would only resume in 29 after he steps down. So
if presumably the prosecutor is a Democrat or whatever the political tide would be at that time?
Yeah, and there is an indictment that has been issued in the case. It's very complex. There are people who've already pled guilty in the case. And so there's a lot there that to tie President Trump to election interference.
But no statute of limitations or anything?
Well, it would be held over pending.
Okay.
In fact, the agreement would be to hold over the case, assuming that he wouldn't then claim that the statute of limitations had run.
Now, in so many of these cases, it was in part a strategy, and it seems on Trump's legal team's behalf, and also just luck to delay. Would we be in a different spot had any of these gone forward earlier, and should prosecutors have moved quicker?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the prosecution was blocked in some cases, by happenstance in the Georgia case, by the judge in the Florida case. And so the wheels of justice do move slowly, and stuff happens, and we see the delay. And the President Trump lawyers did a great job at seeking delay, because they knew that delay was on the side of their client, and they ended up being right. But I just want to quickly transition. The civil cases are going to go on. The U.S. Supreme Court decided during the Clinton administration, when he was sued by Paula Jones for sexual improprieties, that a sitting president could be responsible for a civil damages action, and that would not distract the president from his office.
But he's the president. How do you get any sort of fair ruling, expected judge to come down, particularly when you have a president who's apt to really say that he'll use his powers to punish those who defy him?
Well, the two cases that have just recently are on appeal, one being from E. Jean Carroll for defamation, about $80 million. I think that appeal is not going to really tarnish the office or distract him, and I think he'll be able to get a fair hearing from the New York courts on that one. And then another New York court in terms of the fraud case against him for inflating the value of his land, that's like $350 million. That appeal is going forward as well. It may be reduced, but I think that will continue, and that'll be fair. What I don't know about is the civil damages for that he participated in the election interference case. People who were injured have sued him personally, and that may be too close to his actions as a prior president for this court. So that's the one that we have to look at that they may say, no, it's not going forward.
Sure, we will have you back to learn more when and if that happens, as well as any potential pardons related to those attackers on January 6th. Thank you so much for lending your expertise.
My pleasure.
All right, once again, that was Harold Krent with the Chicago-Kent School of Law. Up next, a blow to state lawmakers' efforts to restrict assault weapons. Stay with us. A federal judge has ruled Illinois' ban on semi-automatic guns as unconstitutional. The Protect Illinois Communities Act has, since 2023, banned assault weapons, as well as 15-round handgun magazines, 10-round long gun magazines. Gun owners claim that the ban infringes on their constitutional right to bear arms, while gun control advocates argue that it's common sense, a way to protect Illinois residents from guns that are designed to be extraordinarily lethal. Here with more on this recent ruling are John Schmidt, a member of the Gun Violence Prevention PAC's executive board, also former Associate U.S. Attorney General. And then joining us via Zoom is Dan Eldridge, president of Federal Firearms Licensees of Illinois. He is among the gun shop owners suing Illinois in this federal case. Thanks to each of you for joining us. And Dan, I'm going to actually begin with you on Zoom. You have called this a victory. How major is it? And do you expect it will set a precedent?
Well, hi, Amanda. Yeah, this was a major win. Judge McGlynn said in a number of places in this 168-page ruling that PICA is an unconstitutional affront to the Second Amendment and must be enjoined. I think that we came better prepared than the state. We have the facts and the constitutional law on our side, and we won quite a bit more than just guns.
Now, I'm going to take this over to you. What did he mean by more than just guns? And by the way, this is not particularly a surprise ruling, is it, John?
It's not a surprise to anyone. I think everyone would have been amazed if Judge McGlynn had not enjoined the statute. He did it a year and a half ago. After the statute was passed, he enjoined it, even though at that point 2 other federal judges had come out the other way. His injunction was immediately stayed by the Court of Appeals. The Court of Appeals then took it up on review and reversed it. And that decision then went up to the Supreme Court of the United States, which didn't review it. So his injunction the last time around never had any impact. This time he has stayed it himself for 30 days.
So what's going to happen in that 30-day period?
I think the Attorney General, who has already filed an appeal, will ask the Seventh Circuit to extend the stay. I would be very surprised, and I think the plaintiffs in the case would be very surprised if the Seventh Circuit doesn't extend it. So the Court of Appeals will then set a briefing and argument on this new injunction and probably hear argument sometime next year.
So translation, right now there's a 30-minute period, regardless of this ruling where it has been ruled unconstitutional, that the law is still in effect, and you expect that that is going to be continued. Dan, back to you. Do you believe that this will go into effect in 30 days, no ban on so-called assault weapons ban in Illinois? Are you therefore, I don't know, preparing to sell these sort of weapons for holiday shoppers?
No, we have no expectations of that, but I also want to clarify a couple of things here. What happened last year was we won a preliminary injunction from Judge McGlynn. The Northern District case has lost their motions for preliminary injunction, and our preliminary injunction was stayed. That was a very brief look at it by the Seventh Circuit. Judge Easterbrook himself said that he was leaving the door open to being convinced that these are not military weapons. So it was really, both of these were very, very preliminary maneuvering, and it's frankly astonishing to me, who's somebody who's not familiar with the proceedings of the federal court, that 18 months later we're finally getting to the meat of the merits here. So,
as you said, there's been a lot of legal wrangling, rulings back and forth. When will this be settled? Dan, is this something that you believe is going to go to the U.S. Supreme Court?
Well, there's a lot of moving parts here. So our case will proceed.
We've got steps first before we get there, yes.
Yeah, well, no, our case will proceed to the Seventh Circuit. The state has already filed a notice of appeal, which we expected. And in answer to your previous question, no, we have no expectations that we will get another so-called Freedom Week. Under the injunction, we did have a week when we could, in fact, sell and transfer these prohibited items back in April and May of 2023. And we don't anticipate that happening again. So what will happen now is, in our case, it'll go to the Seventh Circuit, some panel, but the three-judge panel doesn't exist anymore. Judge Diane Wood has retired from the judiciary. She's retired from the bench. So right now, if it were the same panel, it's split 50-50 between Easterbrook and Brennan. Perhaps your other guest can inform us on how these panels are made up. We just don't know what the panel will be.
You don't know what the panel will be, nor do you know the decision. I want to go to something that you do know, and this is a law that has now been in effect for nearly 2 years. What has the impact been?
Well, the biggest impact is you cannot go out in Illinois if you're a primo like the Highland Park killer who wants to find a gun to kill as many people as possible and buy an assault weapon with a 10 or 15 round, and you can go up to 30, 40 round magazine capacity. It hasn't stopped any law-abiding citizen from going in and buying all the guns that they need for purposes of self-defense. Mr. Eldridge and his colleagues have a very active business, and they can and should continue to have it. But what we've learned is we can stop the sale of these weapons, which we have learned.
Has it saved lives?
I think it has saved lives to the extent that the primos of the world have not been able to go out and buy those weapons in Illinois. We once had a federal ban, and that would be even better. But I think it has saved lives in Illinois.
Dan, your reaction to that, primo, by the way, would be the alleged Highland Park shooter for really the mass shooting during Independence Day that set this law in motion.
Right. Well, I think it's quite a stretch to say that it saved lives for a number of reasons. There are nationwide some, if you include the full spectrum of weapons banned under this act, there's probably 30 or 50 million weapons in circulation. So you've halted new sales, new transfers in Illinois. But there's a lot of water in the pool already, and most of these the vast majority of these are owned by law-abiding citizens for lawful purposes. Has it saved lives? Well, let's look at firearms as they contribute to homicides. Firearms-related homicides are generally about 11,000 a year, both justified and unjustified, but that's the non-suicide firearms deaths, generally in that range. All long guns, rifles, shotguns are responsible for something like 400. The vast preponderance of criminal misuse of firearms is in the handguns, not the rifles. So it's a stretch to say that it saved any lives. And more importantly, it is a massive, massive abridgment of constitutional rights.
John, last word to you. We have a very short bit of time left, but you, again, have argued that these weapons deserve special treatment because they are so very lethal. Now, do you have an expectation? You brought up a federal ban. Under a Trump presidency, is there any likelihood?
No, but we know for a fact that during the 10 years the federal ban was in effect, we had a substantial reduction in mass shootings in America. And we can look at states that have banned assault weapons and high-capacity magazines and see the same effect. But no, I have no optimism that under President Trump we're going to see federal action.
That was the last word. Thank you again for your time. That is John Schmidt with the Gun Violence Prevention Political Action Committee. Also to Dan Eldridge, a owner of Maxon's Shooting Range, I believe is the official name there. Thanks to both of you for your time. And up next, revisiting our conversation with the First Lady of Children's Music. Stay with us. The woman known as the First Lady of Children's Music died at the age of 100 this weekend. Ella Jenkins was raised in Chicago. She wrote and performed music for children since the 1950s and received a Grammy Lifetime Achievement Award in 2004. Jay Shefsky spoke with Jenkins back in 2014 as she was being interviewed for a documentary about her life and work. Take a look.
So I gotta do this.
Ella Jenkins lives and breathes music. Even as she waits for the documentary crew to finish setting up, Ella passes the time with her harmonica.
Are we rolling? Okay, so I was asking a little bit.
Ella Jenkins has been writing and performing music for children for more than 50 years. She's released 39 records, won Grammys, and performed around the world. But she's most at home in a classroom with children.
Here we go. Hello, let's try.
This is from a 1991 DVD.
Hello, and how are you? I'm fine. I'm fine. I'm fine.
Ella's calm, loving, and respectful approach with children is legendary.
Sing it a wee bit louder. Hello.
Filmmaker Tim Farron says he's seen her magic with kids even when she's not performing.
She will find the one kid there, and before you know it, they'll be together, singing and talking and having a great time. It's just something that's innate in who she is.
One of her earliest musical influences was her Uncle Floyd. She called him Uncle Flood.
Sometimes when I would hear him play and sing, I would hum along and sometimes even whistle, although my mother said girls and women do not whistle. Sometimes when I'm taking a bath, I would whistle at them.
Ella Jenkins was born in St. Louis and grew up in Chicago. Her mother may not have approved of whistling, but she was okay with the harmonica.
She used to do what they call day work. She would be in many different suburban homes, and she would cook sometimes and wash clothes and iron clothes. But anyway, she saved up enough money and took me to a music store, and that's when I got acquainted with my own harmonica. Harmonica, can we all say that? Harmonica.
Ella says she listened to records and the radio, went to stage shows, but she also had a keen ear for the everyday music she heard around her as a child, like the man selling produce.
And I remember the watermelon person. He said, yeah, get your watermelon, yeah.
Or how she and her girlfriends had their own way of calling each other to come outside.
You say, ooh, hey, ooh, hey. And when you heard that sound, you came to your window and said, that means come on downstairs and we get together.
Or high school chants.
What's the matter with the team? The team's all right. What's the matter with the team? The team's all right.
Ella Jenkins has a degree in sociology from San Francisco State. Back in Chicago, she brought her love of music and the new songs she was writing to her work with children at the YWCA.
Where did you come from?
And she performed at folk clubs around Chicago.
Where did you go?
That landed her a job on WTTW's children's show, The Totem Club.
They are using some instruments very much like these Spanish castanets. They're called.
As one of the hosts, she sang folk songs and brought in folk music from around the world.
What did you feed her? Corn and hay.
Ella Jenkins' first record had the dry but descriptive title, Call and Response Rhythmic Group Singing. And it's one of the styles she's best known for.
Milk her like you should? Yes, ma'am.
She says she got the idea from Cab Calloway, who she saw as a kid at the Regal Theater.
He was the one who would chant out the sounds, and he'd say it back to me, and say, hidey, 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 hi. Hidey what? Hody, hody, ho. Hody, hody. So the whole audience got involved with that. Who fed the chickens? I did. Who stacked the hay? I did.
She really is what you see. She is a genuine, warm person. She was a pioneer in early television. She was a pioneer in education. She marched for civil rights.
I don't know what kids' music would be without her. I mean, she's that fundamentally essential.
Oh, well, you skate and you skate.
Any more than you could imagine folk music without Woody Guthrie or Pete Seeger.
And you skate and you stop. Well, how
Squish, squish, squish.
And even at 90, she's working her magic with a starstruck reporter.
Yes, ma'am.
Was she covered with tick?
Yes, ma'am. So no plans to stop?
No, you know, when you stop, you might stop.
Flop, flop, flop.
And that's the end of the poor old cow. Okay, you did real well.
That was one of the highlights of my life. Did you call and respond with you?
That was wonderful. Again, a conversation from 2014 with musician Ella Jenkins. For more on her life and on her career, you can visit our website. And that is our show for this Monday night. Join us tomorrow night at 5:30 and at 10. State lawmakers return to Springfield for veto session. Our Spotlight Politics team on what to expect. And thank you to our veterans and to their loved ones for their service and sacrifices. Now, for all of us here at Chicago Tonight, I'm Amanda Vinicki. Thanks for watching. Stay healthy and safe, and have a great night.
Closed captioning is made possible by Robert A. Clifford and Clifford Law Offices, a Chicago personal injury and wrongful death firm that is proud to recognize its 20 attorneys, recognized in the 2025 edition of the Best Lawyers in America.